What's up guys, Coach Az here, and today we're going to talk about whether or not you should be kicking with the foot or the shin when throwing the roundhouse kick. Now this is quite a hotly debated topic, and really you're going to get varying information depending on who you ask, and in particular what school you go to and what discipline that you are practicing in. So I'm going to try to approach it from a more balanced approach and give you both sides of the argument, and you can make your mind up for when to use it. In my opinion, there is no right or wrong answer with this one. It simply comes down to use cases. I think both sides have their benefits and both sides have their cons. If you're looking for a definitive this or that, there isn't an answer. I think a big part of it is going to come down to what discipline you're training and what ranges that you're working in. So let's start looking at kicking with the foot, or the instep. The majority of time where you're gonna see this and where you're gonna hear people talk about kicking with this like instep part of our foot is going to be at karate, taekwondo, sports, kickboxing. The way I teach my kids when we're trying to get them to kick like this is they're gonna kick with their laces. We obviously don't wanna be kicking with the toe, so we're pointing the foot away and we're hitting with that top part of the foot, the laces of the foot coming round up into the ankle. These disciplines, the majority of the time in competition, are kicking with foot pads. The big advantage with kicking like this is the range. You're using the maximum length of your leg, which means that you can stand as far away from your opponent as possible. This is actually effectively one of your longest weapons and allows you to stay at a safe distance from your opponent. The main disadvantage that's argued is that your foot is fragile. Your foot is made up of loads and loads of tiny little bones. It's far more susceptible to injury if it hits an elbow or hits something really hard like a shin. And this is where kicking with the shin comes in. So when we kick with the shin, we give up some of that range, of course. We need to get a little bit closer in order to hit our target. However, our shin is only comprised of two bones, and only one of which is going to be making contact with our opponent. So with that in mind, when you think of sports such as K1 kickboxing and Muay Thai, you can see why these styles of martial arts would favor the shin bone. They are more likely to be working barefoot, bare shin in competition, and therefore it makes much more sense for them to be using their shin to attack the legs, the body, and even up to the head. One thing I don't feel gets talked about enough is how this works when we're combining it with punches. When people talk about this topic, more often than not, they seem to talk about it as if it's this isolated thing, that you're just going to be throwing the kick on its own. But the reality of it is more often than not, you should be, and you probably are, throwing it in combination with punches. And this brings us back to the range argument. Now this is going to vary depending on the length of your arms and legs, but take this example of me for instance. When I throw my jab cross at the correct range where I'd throw it ideally, I cannot help but hit with the shin when kicking to the leg or kicking to the body. So if I was throwing that in a combination on an opponent who was not moving backwards or forwards, who was holding their ground, I would have no choice but to make contact with the shin. However, given that same situation where I attack to the head, and again we're assuming our opponent hasn't moved, just the nature of the angle causes me to then kick with my ankle / instep of my foot. Now again, this is going to go back to talking about your disciplines, what's allowed and what's permitted. There are a lot of martial arts where if you're in competition, you're not even permitted to kick with your shin. It would be considered a foul. And in the same respect, if you kick with your foot in Muay Thai, especially out in Thailand, they will often see that as you throwing an incorrect technique when shooting that kick, especially when shooting it to the leg or to the body. These are the areas where if you kick with your foot, you're far more likely to sustain an injury rather than damaging your opponent. As a general rule of thumb, I like to kick with the foot when I'm attacking the leg or when I'm attacking up to the head. The reason I use it when attacking the leg is not necessarily as a power kick, but as more of a setup to open up my hands or to draw my opponent's attention down lower. When attacking the body, I will primarily try to use the shin. Not only is this the safest way for me to throw the kick, but it's also the way that I believe I can generate the maximum amount of power when throwing my roundhouse. Of course, regardless of which way you decide to kick, conditioning is key. So I will do a follow-up video on this one on how to condition your feet and your shins properly so that you can kick more safely and reduce the risk of injury. In conclusion guys, should you kick with your foot or your shin? Well, it depends on the situation. My recommendation is train both and train in all different ranges and all different abilities. This way, you've got the right tool for the job, regardless of how close you are to your opponent or what area that you are attacking to. The trick with all of this is experiment. Find what works for you. It's going to vary from one person to the other, and this is how we end up having these debates. What I will say is, don't believe anyone who tells you that this one way is the only correct way. Generally speaking, especially when it comes to martial arts, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. So guys, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, please hit that like button. It helps share this video with more people. Subscribe to the channel. More great videos coming soon, and I will see you on the next one.